Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Xsolla sessions. We're thrilled to have you here this morning. We've got our first speaker coming up going, why alternative payment methods are no longer alternative. We're going to welcome to the stage Elena Popova, Director of Products.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for this session. And my goal today is to equip you with real-life examples of how impactful alternative payment methods can be for your business if you choose the right strategy. And before we go deeper into this topic, I want to quickly introduce myself and explain you why I care so much about alternative payment methods. I'm Elena, and I'm passionate about payments and fascinated by local payment habits, by how people choose to pay and how those cultural habits shape monetization. I've spent over a decade building payments for gaming, and during most of that period was dedicated to launching and scaling payment methods around the globe. And most of the payment methods Xsolla supports today, me and my team personally seen them go from negotiations, integration, and real revenue impact. So everything I'm sharing today is this mix of experience, curiosity, and lessons learned for more over than a decade in this space. And I want to start this session with a definition of alternative payment method. This term was born in early 2000s to define everything that was not Visa or MasterCard. And back then, that made total sense because cards were dominant and everything else was niche. But today, we have 6 traditional global payment methods in the world, and all of them, again, card brands: Visa, MasterCard, UnionPay, JCB. So, and everything else still falls under alternative payment methods. Bank transfers, vouchers, mobile money, etc. But the key idea here, and the key idea of this presentation, is that so-called alternatives are the primary ways people pay in many countries. Think of your checkout as a door, and if you have only credit cards on your checkout, you've just locked that door for half of your gamers trying to walk through it. Let's look at some numbers here. The United States, a market where cards are still dominant. But as you move across this chart, the balance shifts. Like, for example, in South Korea and Indonesia, alternative payment methods are dominant and credit cards are the minority. Or, for example, like in Japan and Brazil, on those markets, this gap between alternative payment methods and credit card is closing fast. This is not a future trend. This has happened to many global, most dominant gaming markets already. And the key takeaway from this slide is not that cards are going away. They are definitely not. But the card-only strategy is a geography-specific strategy. And if your game has a global audience or an ambition to have one, your payment mix needs to reflect where your gamers actually are. So now let's get into the evidence. What actually happens when developers enable local payment methods? Let me show you 5 real examples based on the partners' data we have at Xsolla. PayPay in Japan, partners who activated it saw over 35% of sales uplift and nearly 9% boost in conversion rates. PayPay has 56 billion registered users in Japan and hold 7% of the market. And despite having this smaller market share compared to credit cards, PayPay is significantly boosting revenues of our partners. It's a mainstream payment habit with an easy QR code-based checkout. Klarna in Europe, enabling payments with Klarna, what we saw, triples annual sales and attracts new users. Klarna has around 15% of market share in Germany and Sweden. And the fact that Klarna has turned into a verb across some population in those countries really shows how integrated these payment methods became into daily lives of people. Kakao Pay in South Korea is a must-have payment method there. It covers everything. It lives on the Kakao platform, and it covers everything from everyday chatting to financial management, online shopping. And enabling Kakao Pay typically results in a 20 percentage point conversion rate increase in our partners. NuPay in Brazil, this is an example I like most on this list because this is an example of an indie game who launched NuPay in Brazil, which brought them 5,000 new paying users on the first week after launch. NuPay is highly attractive for Brazilian customers because of its core offering, interest-free installments. And installments is basically a deep-rooted cultural norm in Brazil. M-Pesa in Kenya, and this is the last example in this part. An enterprise game developer launched M-Pesa in Kenya, and they saw around 6% of sales uplift. M-Pesa is more than a payment method. It's a mobile money infrastructure. The majority of the population in Kenya is unbanked, meaning that they do not have bank cards, they do not have bank accounts. And M-Pesa bridges this gap between unbanked population and actually digital payment systems by operating as a mobile wallet independent of banks or card brands. And they rely mostly on their network of cash agents. So this pattern is very clear across all 5 examples. Local payment methods open up new gamer segments. But now let's talk about something that is usually not covered in the industry. What happens when game developers remove local payment methods? Let me show you the other side. I have 3 examples, 3 horror stories. And the first one is about a mid-tier game developer who removed Naver Pay from their checkout in South Korea. Important note here about Naver Pay is that it's number 2 e-wallet in South Korea. And the result was that 97% of users never paid again. And total sales on the South Korean market just dropped by 58%. This is what payment method dependency looks like. Users usually do not switch over to the next available option. They just go away. You can just lose them permanently. An indie game developer in Brazil removed all alternative payment methods except for Pix, and they left Pix and credit cards on checkout. Their reasoning was that the fees felt too high for the rest of alternative payment methods, and they just switched them off. The outcome in this story was that 90% of users who used to pay with the removed payment methods never paid again. And only 9% of the users switched over to new payment methods. Another fact about Brazilian market is that alternative payment methods, excluding Pix, hold 20% of the overall Brazilian digital payments market, which means that 1 in 5 transactions just gone for this game developer. And the cost of this lost revenue far outweighed the fee savings that this game developer was hoping to make. And the last example here is about an indie game developer who removed all alternative payment methods in Germany. Alternative payment methods in Germany is the most dominant part of the payments landscape. They collectively hold 88% of the digital market there. And after removing alternative payment methods, conversion rate dropped by 40 percentage points. And 70% of users who used to pay with all those alternative payment methods never paid again. This is why your payment strategy needs to be based on market data, not about the assumptions about interface simplicity, fees, or anything else. So what are the key takeaways from those two parts I've just mentioned? The first one, when you are adding a payment method, just make sure you have all those questions answered. Is this payment method relevant for your audience? Is this relevant for this really country? Is the user experience that you have on your checkout is seamless and user-friendly? Because not every payment method is right for each game or for each region. And when you remove payment methods, the risk is even much higher than most of the developers expect. Users may churn, they may rely on just one payment method, and the impact on conversion rate and sales is often immediate and difficult to recover from. So my message here is be data-driven, A/B test, and work with local experts. This is what a global portfolio of payment methods looks like in practice. Over 1,000 payment methods globally in over than 200 geographies. And each payment method on this map has their own user behavior, regulatory context, and their own technical peculiarities that you need to know when you integrate it. To manage something like this well, you need to deeply understand what's the specifics of the market you are operating on. This can be built only through data, through researches, and being close to the ground in those markets. So if you remember just 3 things from today's session, I insist them to be: first, add the right payment method, because every market has a set of payment methods, local payment methods that drive conversion, drive sales, and you just don't want to miss them. Second, geography-specific strategies is the best strategies for your success. And the third part here is very important. Alternative payment methods are essential. So we started this session by questioning a word, and I hope everything that I've demonstrated to you today made the case. In many markets, alternative payment methods do not compete with credit cards, they dominate. And the term alternative is a legacy of how payments used to work. So it's no longer reflects reality. So my honest advice, if you are not planning to invest a lot into building payments capabilities in-house, just don't try to do it alone. Work with experts. So thank you for joining this session today, and I'd be happy to dig into any specific market, payment method, or your particular use case. We can sit down together, figure out which methods matter most for your audience and works better for your country. Thank you.
Xsolla.